The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Hundreds of species filled the circular seats that rose toward the ceiling like steps in an ancient arena. Some had scales, some had fur, some had no solid form at all, and floated in containment fields. They had come from every corner of the known galaxy to discuss matters of territory, trade, and power. Ambassador Zyrith Kolvan of the Valorian Dominion stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall and thin, with gray skin stretched tight over a skull that came to a sharp point at the back. His four eyes blinked in sequence as he waited for the noise to die down. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed a small, blue and green planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "Honored members of the Council," Zyrith began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "I come before you today with a simple request. The Valorian Dominion wishes to expand into Sector 447. This sector contains valuable mining resources that will benefit the entire galactic economy." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Sector 447 was on the outer rim of the galaxy, far from the busy trade routes and powerful empires. Most species had never even bothered to explore it. "There is, however, a small complication," Zyrith continued. He pressed a button on his wrist device, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed a creature standing upright on two legs. It had no scales, no claws, no visible weapons on its body. Its skin was soft and exposed. It had only two eyes, positioned on the front of its round head. "This is a human," Zyrith said. "They have recently colonized a world in Sector 447. They call it New Helsinki." The Drenari ambassador leaned forward. She was covered in thick green scales and had survived 3 assassination attempts. Very little surprised her anymore. "And what do you know of these humans?" she asked. Zyrith smiled, showing rows of small, sharp teeth. "Very little, because there is very little to know. They achieved interstellar travel less than 100 years ago. They have no natural armor, no venom, no claws or fangs. They require sleep for approximately 1/3 of their existence. They die from temperature changes that most of us would find merely uncomfortable." He paused for effect. "They are, in simple terms, one of the weakest species we have ever encountered." Laughter rippled through the chamber. The Korvathi delegate, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like stone, slapped his knee. "And you need council approval to deal with these soft creatures?" he bellowed. "Just brush them aside and take what you want." Zyrith nodded slowly. "That is precisely what I intend to do. But protocol requires that I inform the Council before any military action against a spacefaring species, no matter how primitive. I am asking for formal approval to claim the human colony and its resources. If they resist, we will pacify them." The vote was quick. One by one, the species of the Galactic Council pressed their approval buttons. The motion passed unanimously. No one objected. No one asked questions. The humans were simply too small, too weak, and too far away to matter. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, the Drenari ambassador paused beside Zyrith. A word of caution, Ambassador," she said quietly. "I once read a file on these humans. They have an interesting history." Zyrith waved his hand dismissively. "All species have interesting histories. What matters is their capabilities, and their capabilities are nothing." The Drenari ambassador studied him for a long moment. "Perhaps," she said, "but the file mentioned something curious. These humans, on their homeworld, they were once prey, small and weak, as you say. Yet somehow, they became the dominant species. They killed creatures 10 times their size. They spread across every corner of their planet. They even killed each other in numbers that should have ended their species entirely. Yet they survived. Does that not concern you?" Zyrith laughed. "Old stories and legends. Every species has them. The Valorian Dominion has conquered 43 species. These humans will simply be number 44. The Drenari ambassador said nothing more. She simply walked away, her scales clicking against the crystal floor. She had tried to warn him. That would have to be enough. 12,000 light-years away, on a small planet covered in forests and lakes, a little girl named Sophia ran through her family's garden. She was 7 years old, with dark, curly hair and a gap where her 2 front teeth had fallen out. In her hands, she carried a piece of paper covered in colorful drawings. "Papa! Papa!" she shouted. "Look what I made at school today." Her father, Anders, looked up from the vegetables he was planting. He was a tall man with kind eyes and dirt on his hands. He had come to New Helsinki 15 years ago as part of the first wave of colonists. He had helped build the roads, the schools, and the hospitals. He had met his wife Maria here, and together they had created a life. "What do you have there, little one?" he asked, wiping his hands on his pants. Sophia thrust the paper toward him. It showed 4 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. "It's us," she said proudly. "That's you. And that's Mama. And that's baby Eric. And that's me." Anders felt his heart swell. He picked up his daughter and held her close. "It's beautiful," he said. "The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. We should hang it on the wall." From inside the house, Maria's voice called out, "Dinner is ready. Come inside before it gets cold." Anders carried Sophia toward the house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the distance, he could see the lights of the colony's main city, beginning to flicker on. 30,000 people lived on New Helsinki now. It wasn't a big number by galactic standards, but to Anders, it felt like home. They sat down at the dinner table together. Maria had made stew with vegetables from their garden. Baby Eric sat in his high chair, making a mess with his food. Sophia talked endlessly about her day at school, about her friends, about a butterfly she had seen during lunch. It was an ordinary evening, a perfect evening. None of them noticed the stars beginning to disappear. One by one, blocked out by massive shapes descending through the atmosphere. The first explosion came without warning. The windows of the house shattered inward. Anders threw himself over Sophia, shielding her with his body. Maria screamed and grabbed Eric from his chair. The ground shook as more explosions rocked the colony. Through the broken window, Anders could see the sky filled with ships. They were enormous, each one larger than the colony's biggest building. Lights flashed from their undersides, and wherever those lights touched, fire erupted. "We have to run," Anders said, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. "We have to get to the bunkers." They ran out into chaos. People were everywhere, screaming, crying, trying to find their loved ones. The ships above continued their bombardment without mercy. Anders saw a school collapse, children still inside. He saw a hospital take a direct hit. He saw people he had known for years turn to ash in an instant. He ran faster, holding Sophia's hand so tight that his knuckles turned white. The bunker was 3 blocks away. They were so close. Anders could see the entrance, could see other families rushing inside. Just a little further. Just a few more steps. The light hit them without warning. Anders felt nothing. One moment he was running, holding his daughter's hand. The next moment, there was only silence and darkness. The last thing he saw was Sophia's drawing, somehow still clutched in his other hand, the 4 stick figures still holding hands under the yellow sun. The attack lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 12,000 human beings were dead. The colony of New Helsinki was nothing but smoke and ashes. The Valorian soldiers walked through the ruins, scanning for survivors. They found very few. Admiral Torvex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the destruction with satisfaction. The operation had gone exactly as planned. Minimal resistance, no casualties on the Valorian side. The humans had died like the weak creatures they were. "Send a message to Earth," he ordered. "Inform them that their colony has been claimed by the Valorian Dominion. They have one standard month to surrender all remaining colonies and submit to our rule. If they refuse, they will be exterminated." His communications officer nodded and began preparing the transmission. Admiral Torvex returned to his quarters to rest. It had been a long day, but a successful one. Soon, the Valorian Dominion would control all of Sector 447. The humans would either surrender or die, and either outcome was acceptable. He did not bother to learn the names of those he had killed. They were just numbers to him. Statistics. Acceptable losses in the pursuit of expansion. He did not know about Sophia's drawing. He did not know about Anders and Maria and baby Eric. He did not know that in the ashes of New Helsinki, a rescue team would eventually find that drawing, somehow preserved despite the flames. They would find it still clutched in the remains of a father's hand, and they would weep. He did not know any of this, but he would learn. On Earth, the message arrived at 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Within minutes, every government on the planet had been notified. Within hours, every news network was broadcasting the same images. The burning ruins of New Helsinki, the massive Valorian ships, the body count that kept climbing as more information came in. 12,000 dead. Men, women, and children. Farmers, and teachers, and doctors. Entire families erased in a single night. The world watched in horror, and then, slowly, the horror turned to something else. The emergency session of the United Nations was the largest in human history. Every nation sent representatives. Enemies who had not spoken in decades sat side by side. Old grudges, ancient hatreds, generations of distrust, all of it melted away in the face of what had happened. When the Valorian demand was read aloud, surrender or be exterminated, there was silence in the chamber. Then someone laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes before violence. The kind of laugh that means someone has made a terrible mistake. One by one, other voices joined in. The laughter spread through the chamber, growing louder and louder, until it echoed off the walls. Delegates from countries that had been at war for centuries laughed together. They laughed at the absurdity of the demand. They laughed at the arrogance of creatures who thought they could threaten humanity and expect submission. When the laughter finally died down, the Secretary General rose to speak. "I believe," she said calmly, "that our response should be clear." The vote was unanimous. The response was sent back along the same communication channel the Valorians had used. It contained a single word, translated into every language the computer could identify. "No." On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Torvex received the human response with confusion. "Just one word?" he asked his communications officer. "Nothing else? No counteroffer? No plea for mercy? And health?" "Nothing else, Admiral. Just the word, no." Torvex frowned. This was not how conquered species behaved. They usually begged. They bargained. They offered tribute, resources, anything to avoid destruction. They did not simply refuse. "Perhaps they do not understand the situation," he said finally. "Send another message. Explain in detail what will happen to their remaining worlds if they do not comply." The message was sent. The response came back within an hour. It was the same single word. No. Admiral Torvex felt the first stirring of unease in his chest. Something was wrong. These humans were supposed to be weak, primitive, insignificant. They were supposed to surrender. Why were they not afraid? He did not know it yet. But he had just made the worst mistake of his life. He had attacked a species that did not know how to surrender. He had killed their children. And in doing so, he had awakened something that had slumbered for centuries. On Earth, the factories were already beginning to retool. The scientists were already beginning to design. The soldiers were already beginning to train. Humanity was not preparing to negotiate. Humanity was preparing for war. And when humans go to war, truly go to war, the galaxy would soon learn that there is no force in existence more terrifying. The Valorians had started this fight. Humanity intended to finish it. In a small office in Geneva, a woman named Elena Vasquez sat at her desk, staring at a holographic image of New Helsinki. She had been chosen to lead humanity's military response. She had fought in 3 wars during her career and had never lost a battle. But this was different. This was not a war between nations. This was a war for survival. On her desk was a file containing photographs of every person who had died on New Helsinki. She had looked at each one. She had memorized their names. She had promised herself, silently, that she would remember them until the day she died. One photograph in particular caught her attention. It showed a little girl with dark curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. According to the file, her name was Sophia. She was 7 years old. She liked to draw pictures of her family. Elena traced the photograph with her finger. "I promise you," she whispered. "They will pay for what they did. Every single one of them. I will make sure of it." Outside her window, the sun was rising over Geneva. Across the planet, the war machine of humanity was beginning to move. Ships that had been mothballed were being reactivated. Weapons that had been banned were being rebuilt. Volunteers were flooding recruitment centers in every city, on every continent. The Valorians had thought they were attacking a weak and primitive species. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The war had begun. The transformation of Earth happened faster than anyone thought possible. In the first 72 hours after the attack on New Helsinki, the emergency coalition was formed. Nations that had threatened each other with nuclear weapons just weeks before now shared military secrets freely. Factories that had built cars and televisions and children's toys shut down overnight and reopened to build weapons, armor, and warships. There was no arguing. There was no debate. There was no time for politics. 12,000 people were dead, and humanity had only one thought: make them pay. Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the Global Command Center, watching dozens of holographic displays show the progress of human industry. Every screen showed numbers climbing upward, weapons manufactured, ships completed, soldiers trained. The numbers grew every hour, every minute, every second. "Report," she said to her aide. A young man named Captain Torres, who had not slept in 3 days. Torres checked his tablet. Dark circles hung under his eyes, but his voice was steady. "We've converted 93% of heavy manufacturing to military production. 14 shipyards are now operational, with another 12 coming online within the week. We've had 47 million volunteers for military service. We can only train about 2 million in the time we have. But the rest are being put to work in factories and support roles." Elena nodded slowly. "And the weapons research? Progressing faster than expected. The physics teams have been working around the clock. They think they've found a way to improve our plasma weapons by about 60%. And the engineering corps has developed a new type of armor that should hold up better against Valorian fire." "How did they do it so fast?" Torres smiled grimly. "They're not sleeping, ma'am. None of them are. They say they'll sleep when the war is over." Elena looked at her aide more carefully. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. She saw the same thing in everyone she met these days. The entire species was running on anger and grief and determination. It should have been unsustainable. By every measure of human physiology, people should have been collapsing. They needed sleep. They needed rest. They needed time to process the trauma of what had happened. But they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. Every time someone felt tired, they thought of those 12,000 dead on New Helsinki. They thought of the children who would never grow up, the families that would never be whole again. And somehow, they found the strength to keep going. This was something the Valorians had not understood. They had calculated human endurance based on normal conditions. They had not accounted for what happened when humans were pushed beyond their limits. They had not accounted for rage. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Torvex was growing concerned. 2 weeks had passed since the attack on New Helsinki. He had expected human surrender within days. Instead, he had received nothing but silence. His scouts reported strange activity in human space, but they could not get close enough to see what was happening. The few that tried did not return. "I want a full intelligence report," he ordered his science officer, a thin female named Cethix, who specialized in analyzing alien species. "Everything we know about these humans, their psychology, their history, their capabilities. Something is wrong, and I want to understand what." Cethix worked for 3 days straight, gathering data from every source available to the Valorian Dominion. When she finally presented her report, Admiral Torvex wished she had taken longer. "The humans are more complex than we initially assessed," Cethix began, her voice careful and measured. "They evolved on a high-gravity world with extreme environmental conditions. They are not the strongest species on their planet, nor the fastest. They survived through 2 primary mechanisms." She pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared, showing a group of primitive humans chasing a large animal across an open plain. First, persistence hunting. Humans cannot outrun most prey, but they can outlast it. They simply follow their target for hours, sometimes days, until it collapses from exhaustion. Their bodies are designed for endurance over speed. Admiral Torvex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "And the second mechanism? Pack bonding." Another image appeared, showing humans gathered around a fire, holding spears, and watching the darkness around them. Humans form intense emotional connections with their family groups. These connections drive them to extreme behavior when the group is threatened. They will sacrifice themselves for their pack. They will fight far beyond their physical limits. They will pursue threats until those threats are eliminated, regardless of the cost to themselves. "Interesting," Torvex said slowly. "But surely this applies only to their immediate family units. We attacked a colony, not a family." Cethix hesitated. "That is where the situation becomes concerning, Admiral. Human pack bonding is not limited to genetic relatives. They extend these bonds to friends, communities, even abstract concepts like nations or species. When we attacked New Helsinki, we did not simply kill 12,000 individuals. In the human mind, we attacked their entire species." "Their entire species?" "Yes, Admiral. Every human in existence now considers themselves to be under attack. Every human now views us as a threat to their pack. And there is more." Cethix pulled up another display, this one showing brain scans and chemical analyses. Human bodies produce specific chemicals during periods of extreme stress or anger. These chemicals suppress pain and fear. They allow humans to function without sleep for extended periods. They increase strength, speed, and aggression far beyond normal levels. Admiral Torvex stared at the data. "You're telling me that by attacking them, we've made them stronger?" "In a sense, yes. Under normal conditions, humans are relatively fragile. But under threat conditions, particularly threats to their young, they transform. Their historical records are filled with instances of individual humans performing impossible physical feats when their children were in danger. Lifting vehicles that should be too heavy, fighting through injuries that should be fatal, continuing to function long after their bodies should have stopped." The Admiral sat in silence for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been forming in his mind since the beginning of this briefing. What happened to the other predators on their homeworld? The ones that were larger and stronger than the humans? Cethix looked at him with something that might have been fear. "The humans killed them, Admiral. All of them. Every major predator species on Earth was driven to extinction by humans. And they didn't just hunt them for food. Historical records indicate that humans would specifically target creatures that threatened their communities and pursue them until none were left. They have a word for it." "What word?" "Revenge." Admiral Torvex felt cold for the first time in his life. He had commanded fleets against 43 species. He had seen enemies that were faster, stronger, better armed than the Valorians. He had defeated them all, but he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that could not be intimidated. An enemy that would not stop. An enemy that would follow him across the galaxy if necessary, for years or decades or generations, until he was destroyed. How long until we can expect a counterattack? He asked. Sethix checked her calculations. Based on their industrial capacity and current activity levels, 6 months, at minimum. Possibly as long as a year. Then we have time to prepare. With respect, Admiral, I don't think you understand. Sethix pulled up one final display. It showed a graph of human industrial output over the past 2 weeks. The line climbed upward at an angle that should have been impossible. This is their production rate. They are building weapons faster than any species we have ever encountered. They are working in shifts around the clock. They are converting their entire civilization to a war footing. That cannot be sustained. Under normal circumstances, no. But these are not normal circumstances. They are not sleeping, Admiral. They are not resting. They are not even eating properly. And they don't care. Their bodies are destroying themselves from the inside, and they don't care. They will keep going until they either defeat us or die trying. Admiral Torvex stood up abruptly. That's enough. Prepare defensive positions throughout our territory. Increase scout patrols. I want to know the moment the humans make any move toward our space. Yes, Admiral. As Sethix left the room, Torvex walked to the window of his quarters and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the vast darkness of space, a species was preparing to come for him. He had thought this would be an easy conquest, a simple expansion into a weak territory. Another victory to add to the Valorian record. He was beginning to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. On Earth, Elena Vasquez addressed the human race. She stood in front of a camera in the Global Command Center, surrounded by screens showing fleet movements and production statistics. Behind her, a single image was displayed. The drawing that Sophia had made. 4 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. It had been recovered from the ashes of New Helsinki and had become the symbol of the war. Every screen on Earth, every device capable of receiving a signal, carried her message live. Citizens of Earth, she began, her voice calm and steady. Citizens of every human colony. You know why I am speaking to you today. You know what was done to our people on New Helsinki. You know what the Valorians demand of us. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. They think we are weak. They think we will surrender. They think we will beg for mercy and offer ourselves as slaves to avoid destruction. They have studied our bodies and found them fragile. They have measured our technology and found it primitive. They have looked at us and seen prey. Her eyes hardened. They are wrong. She turned slightly, gesturing to the production statistics behind her. In 2 weeks, we have done what should have taken us years. We have united our entire species. We have rebuilt our industries. We have created weapons and ships and armor that will make the Valorians regret ever learning our name. And we have only just begun. She turned back to the camera. Some of you are working in factories right now, building the weapons that will bring justice to New Helsinki. Some of you are training to fight. Some of you are caring for the children and families of those who have gone to war. Every single one of you has a role to play, and every single one of you is playing it. She stepped closer to the camera, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. I know you are tired. I know you are grieving. I know that some nights, you wonder if we can really do this. If we can really stand against an empire that has conquered 43 species and never lost. Quote, she smiled then, a cold and terrible smile. Let me tell you something about those 43 species. They surrendered. They saw the Valorian fleet, and they calculated the odds, and they decided that fighting was not worth the cost. They valued their lives more than their pride, their freedom. She shook her head slowly. We are not like them. We have never been like them. When someone threatens our families, we do not calculate odds. We do not weigh costs. We do not surrender. We fight. We fight until we win, or until there is no one left to fight. This is who we are. This is who we have always been. She pointed at the drawing behind her. Sophia was 7 years old. She drew this picture for her father on the last day of her life. 4 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. A family. Her family. One of 12,000 families that were destroyed by the Valorians. Her voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion she had shown. We will remember them. Every single one. We will carry their names into battle. We will speak them before every engagement. And when we finally stand victorious over the Valorian dominion, we will make sure that the galaxy never forgets what was done here. She straightened, composing herself. The Valorians wanted a war. They thought it would be easy. They thought we would break. She leaned toward the camera one final time. They have no idea what they have unleashed. They attacked our children. They murdered our families. And now, they will learn what humanity does to those who threaten what we love. She stepped back. We are coming for them. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we can build. We will not stop. We will not rest. We will not forgive. Her final words echoed across every human settlement in the galaxy. They wanted war. Now, they will have it. And when it is over, the galaxy will know that humanity is not prey. We are the predators. We always have been. And the Valorians have just made themselves our prey. The transmission ended. Across human space, in factories and training camps and shipyards, people watched in silence. Then, as one, they turned back to their work. The machines hummed louder. The weapons were built faster. The ships launched sooner. Humanity was awake, and it was hungry for revenge. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Torvex watched the human broadcast with growing horror. He had seen war speeches before. He had seen species try to rally their populations against the Valorian threat, but he had never seen anything like this. There was no pleading in the human commander's voice, no fear, but inevitable. And behind her, that child's drawing. Those 4 simple figures, holding hands under a yellow sun. The Valorians had destroyed thousands of such families, and they had turned their destruction into a rallying cry. Admiral, his communications officer said hesitantly, should we respond? Perhaps if we offered terms, open negotiations. Torvex shook his head slowly. You heard her. They are not interested in negotiations. They are not interested in terms. They want one thing. What is that, Admiral? Torvex turned away from the screen, his 4 eyes troubled. Us. They want us. All of us. Every Valorian who was involved in the attack on New Helsinki. Every commander who approved the operation. Every soldier who fired a weapon. He sat down heavily in his command chair. And I am beginning to think that they will not stop until they have us. The bridge was silent. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the human war machine continued to build. Ships were completed. Weapons were tested. Soldiers finished their training and prepared to fight. The Valorians had started this war, but it would be the humans who finished it. The first sign that something was wrong came at 03:00 hours, station time. Kethris 7 was a mining outpost on the edge of Valorian space. It was a small installation, home to approximately 3,000 workers and 500 soldiers. The asteroid it occupied was rich in rare minerals that powered the Valorian war machine. It was considered a safe posting, far from any combat zone. Private Venth was on guard duty when the lights went out. One moment, the corridor was bright and normal. The next, darkness. Complete and total darkness. Venth reached for his communication device, but it was dead. His weapons targeting system was offline. Even the emergency lights, which were supposed to activate automatically, remained dark. Control? He whispered into the silence. Control. Do you copy? No response. Venth stood very still, listening. His species had evolved on a dim world, and his eyes adjusted faster than most. After a moment, He could make out shapes in the darkness. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, and something else. A figure, at the end of the corridor. Tall, bipedal, standing perfectly still. "Identify yourself," Venth called out, raising his weapon even though he knew it wouldn't fire. The figure did not respond. Venth took a step forward. His training told him to hold position, to wait for backup. But backup was not coming. The communications were dead. He was alone. He took another step. The figure was gone. Venth blinked. He had only looked away for a moment. A fraction of a second. But the corridor was empty now. Nothing but shadows and silence. Then he heard it. A whisper. Right beside his ear. A voice speaking words he did not understand, in a language he had never heard. For Sophia, something hit him from behind, and Private Venth knew nothing more. Commander Yethix was reviewing supply reports when the alarm finally sounded. It had taken almost an hour for anyone to realize something was wrong. By then, it was already too late. "Report!" he barked as he strode onto the command center. "What's happening?" His communications officer looked up with terror in his eyes. "We've lost contact with 17 guard posts. Power is out in sectors 4 through 12. And..." He swallowed hard. "We've found bodies, Commander." "How many?" 43 so far. All killed silently. No weapon fire. No signs of struggle. They were just eliminated. Yethix felt cold. 43 soldiers, dead without a fight, on a station that should have been secure. Do we know who's responsible? Security footage is offline, but we managed to restore a few seconds from one camera. The officer pressed a button, and a holographic display flickered to life. The footage was grainy and dark, but Yethix could make out the shape of a corridor. 2 Valorian guards stood at their posts, weapons ready. Then, moving so fast it was almost a blur, something emerged from the shadows behind them. 2 quick movements, and both guards fell. The figure paused, looking directly at the camera. It was a human. Its face was covered in dark paint, stripes of black and green that made it almost invisible in the low light. Its eyes were cold and empty. The human raised one hand toward the camera in a gesture Yethix did not understand. Then, the footage ended. "How many of them are there?" Yethix asked. "We don't know, Commander. Our sensors are offline. But based on the pattern of attacks," the officer hesitated, "we think there might be as few as 12. We think there might be as few as 12. 12? Yethix could not believe what he was hearing. 12? Humans have done all this? They're not normal soldiers, Commander. They move through our station like ghosts. They don't use our corridors. They travel through maintenance shafts, air ducts, spaces we didn't even know existed. And they..." He stopped. "They what?" "They don't stop, Commander. We've shot some of them. Confirmed hits. But they keep fighting. One of them took a plasma bolt to the shoulder and kept going for 6 more hours. We only know because we found blood trails, human blood, but no bodies. They carry their wounded with them." Yethix sat down heavily. This was not war as he understood it. This was something else entirely. These humans were not fighting according to any rules he knew. They were fighting like predators, hunting prey. And he was beginning to realize that on this station, the Valorians were the prey. Sergeant Maria Chen moved through the darkness, like a shadow. She had been on Kethris 7 for 16 hours now. 16 hours without sleep, without food, without rest. Her shoulder burned where the plasma bolt had grazed her, but she had sealed the wound with medical foam and kept moving. There would be time to rest later. There would be time to heal later. Right now, there was only the mission. Her squad had been the first to respond to the call for volunteers. Special forces, the most elite soldiers humanity had. They had trained for years to fight in the darkness, to kill without sound, to appear and disappear like ghosts. But training was one thing. This was real. Maria paused at an intersection, listening. Her hearing had adapted to the silence of the station, and she could detect sounds that would have been inaudible under normal conditions. Footsteps. Far away. Valorian footsteps, heavy and careless. She signaled to her team. 2 fingers, pointing left. Move, silently. Take them down. They obeyed without a sound. 3 shadows flowing through the darkness, converging on the enemy patrol from multiple angles. The Valorians never knew what hit them. Maria stepped over the bodies without looking at them. She had stopped seeing faces hours ago. All she saw now were targets, obstacles between her and the mission objective. Deep in her mind, a voice whispered names. Not the names of the Valorians she was killing. Other names. Sophia, Anders, Maria, Eric. 12,000 names, scrolling endlessly through her consciousness. Before every mission, the soldiers watched a video. It showed the faces and names of everyone who had died on New Helsinki. Every soldier was required to memorize at least 100 names, to carry them into battle, to speak them before the killing began. Maria had memorized all 12,000. For Sophia, she whispered as she moved through the station. The names gave her strength. They pushed back the exhaustion, the pain, the fear. They reminded her why she was here, why she kept fighting, even when her body screamed for rest. She was not just a soldier. She was a messenger. She was carrying the voices of the dead to those who had killed them. And she would not stop until the message was delivered. In space above Kethris 7, the real battle was just beginning. Admiral Torvex had dispatched a fleet to protect the mining outpost as soon as he learned of the infiltration. 30 warships, more than enough to destroy any human force that might appear. But the humans did not fight like any species the Valorians had encountered before. The first attack came from an asteroid field that had been declared safe. Sensors showed no ships, no energy signatures, nothing but rocks and dust. Then, without warning, the rocks began to move. Evasive action, the Valorian fleet commander screamed. All ships, evasive action. Too late. The asteroids had been hollowed out and filled with explosives. Humans had pushed them into position over a period of weeks, moving them so slowly that Valorian sensors had registered them as natural debris. 3 ships were destroyed in the first wave. Then the human fleet appeared. It was smaller than the Valorian force, only 20 ships to their remaining 27. By normal tactical calculations, the Valorians should have won easily. But the humans did not fight by normal tactical calculations. Their ships moved in patterns that made no sense. They ignored defensive formations. They took risks that should have been suicide. One human destroyer, its weapons destroyed, and its hull burning, flew directly into the hangar bay of a Valorian carrier. The resulting explosion destroyed both ships. They're insane, the Valorian commander whispered. They're completely insane. They're completely insane. He was wrong. The humans were not insane. They were simply operating by a different set of rules. Rules that said victory was more important than survival. Rules that said every dead Valorian was worth any price. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, both fleets were crippled. The Valorians had lost 18 ships. The humans had lost 15. By any normal measure, it was a draw. But the humans did not see it that way. They saw that they had faced a superior force and stood their ground. They saw that they had killed more than they had lost. They saw that the Valorians could bleed, and that was all they needed to see. Admiral Torvex received the news in his quarters, alone. 18 ships lost. Kethris 7 effectively neutralized. And reports coming in from across Valorian space of similar attacks. Small teams of humans, infiltrating stations and outposts, hitting supply lines, destroying infrastructure. They were not trying to conquer territory. They were trying to break the Valorian war machine one piece at a time. And it was working. Torvex pulled up a map of Valorian space. Red dots marked the locations of confirmed human attacks. There were dozens of them, scattered across the entire territory. The humans had struck everywhere at once, spreading Valorian forces thin, making it impossible to concentrate defenses. "How are they doing this?" he asked the empty room. "How are they fighting on so many fronts at once?" He knew the answer, even if he did not want to admit it. The humans were not fighting as separate units. They were fighting as one organism. Every attack, every infiltration, every battle was coordinated. Information flowed between human forces in real time. They adapted their tactics moment by moment, responding to Valorian movements before the Valorians even knew they had moved. It was as if the entire human species had become a single predator, and the Valorians were its prey. Torvex opened a file that Sethix had given him weeks ago, a file about human persistence hunting, about how humans had once chased their prey for days, never stopping, never resting, following the trail until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That was what was happening now. The humans were not trying to win a single, decisive battle. They were trying to wear the Valorians down, to cut their supply lines, to destroy their infrastructure, to make them run and run until they could run no more. And the worst part was, it was working. Valorian soldiers were beginning to break. Not from the fighting itself, but from the fear. They never knew when the humans would appear. They never knew which shadow might contain a killer. They slept with one eye open, jumping at every sound. The humans had turned the war into a hunt, and the Valorians were learning what it felt like to be hunted. On the human flagship Remembrance, Elena Vasquez reviewed the latest reports with grim satisfaction. The war had been going on for 8 months now. 8 months of constant fighting, constant pressure, constant loss. Human casualties were mounting. Ships were being destroyed faster than they could be built. Resources were running low, but they were winning. Admiral Chen's forces have secured the Kethris sector, Captain Torres reported. The Valorian supply lines have been cut. Their fleet is pulling back to defensive positions. Elena nodded. And the ground operations? Proceeding according to plan. We've liberated 3 mining colonies and destroyed 4 military installations. Valorian morale is collapsing. Their soldiers are surrendering in increasing numbers. Not enough, Elena said quietly. Torres looked at her uncertainly. Ma'am? It's not enough. Surrenders don't bring back the dead. Destroyed ships don't rebuild New Helsinki. We need to end this war. Decisively. Completely. She pulled up a holographic map of Valorian space. At its center, a single world glowed with a soft purple light. Valoria Prime. Their homeworld. The center of their civilization. As long as it stands, they'll keep fighting. They'll rebuild their fleets, train new soldiers, and come for us again. Torres swallowed. You're talking about an invasion of their homeworld. I'm talking about ending the war. Elena turned to face him. I don't want to kill civilians. I don't want to destroy their culture. I just want to make sure they can never threaten humanity again. And if they don't surrender? Elena's eyes hardened. Then we keep fighting until they do. However long it takes. However many it costs. We will not stop until this is over. She turned back to the map. Begin planning the final offensive. I want a complete battle plan within the month. Every ship,